Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I am so honored to have you on today on the O.G.Rose Spotify podcast. Today I'm getting to talk with Anne Snelgrove-McKerracher from Theory Underground, and I'm so excited to be able to talk with you, Anne, and just sort of jump into some things with you and learn a little bit more about your journey with theory. So thank you so much for your time in advance, and thank you so much for what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's been really great to see Daniel kind of popping up on Dave's channel a little bit more, and I've really enjoyed his talks, and then seeing all the work that you do too. It's like, oh, hey, another cute theory couple somewhere doing cute theory couple things. And so yeah, I'm so excited to be here and to really get to talk to you and kind of meet you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for saying that, Anna. Yeah, it's super. It's been such an honor to be able to for Daniel to be able to get to know Dave better, work, get to be on the channel, and really it's like I said, an honor to be invited on for talks and for participating in what you guys are doing. And I feel the same way about the cute theory couple. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's another cute theory couple, husband and wife, they're tag teaming life and theory and
right
stuff. It's really cool. It's really I love it. I just love it because you don't always see both of the people doing the stuff,
For real. We always wonder, we go, what do other couples talk about? If they're not talking about books or politics or whatever, it's like, what do they do?
I know. I totally, I guess everyone has their own kind of rhythm and flow with each other and their thing, it could be they're just really into TV shows together or something. But yeah, I guess for us, it's funny because a lot of the way we talk with, just on say the net that we do, or just doing conversations philosophically or whatever related to theory, it's that's just our kitchen talk, really.
Right, exactly.
It's really not that, sure, there are times when our talk will be, more personal, more intimate, or about different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, it's we engage on this stuff all the time, just in our daily lives with our kids, in when we're when we're cleaning, when we're doing whatever. It's just that's just part of our lives for real,
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome.
Yeah, which is really cool. And I guess I think I do think it's very I don't know how to put it. I personally, I think it's really great to have a project that you're working on with your significant other. I think it's really cool to have something like that with Daniel. I feel really, privileged and happy, and just it's very exciting to have something that you're working on together,
Yeah.
And I don't know that everybody has that or can know what that's like. And I guess I just I would encourage, not, I don't know how, I'm not sure what you can do to make it happen. I mean, that's where some people pick up ballroom together, or they're going to go learn language together, but just doing something where you're kind of
something that's not just being a consumer, which is also great to just sit down, watch a movie, watch a show, go out to dinner. But it's no, we consume sometimes, and then we're actively creating something together, and whatever that ends up being is awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I guess a lot of people will do it in the, let's just say if we think about in the traditional sense, they might be building a home together, maybe they'll be making a family together. And those things really are beautiful and wonderful, obviously. I believe in those things, but it's just I think that when you have, you almost need something to kind of be the atmosphere for that, even, in my opinion, because otherwise sometimes it's you lose sight that you're building something with each other. I don't know. So it's just and I mean, maybe people can keep that into perspective. Maybe I just enjoy it. So I just, I mean, I'm not saying everybody needs to do that, but I think generally speaking, if couples are seeking to be more connected with each other, I would encourage doing something together where you're both learning, basically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Where you have to be vulnerable together, because a lot of, I think some of the issues that people can have with each other is unintentional power struggles and stuff like that. And if you just go and are okay, we're both going to learn Portuguese from scratch. Well, if you have to both be vulnerable again and make mistakes together,
Yeah. And Dave's a little bit more of a theory expert than I am. But we've recently started doing jujitsu together for the first time. So that's another thing that it's we're both in there, we don't really know what's going on, but I'm going to take you down and tackle you now.
I love that.
Yeah, it's been fun.
That is so fun. That is so, so fun. I love that. Yeah, that can be another great avenue, you know, like in the physical like sphere of things like sports, running, jujitsu.
Yeah.
Like there's so many amazing options. But I love that idea of like really like it's another great example of starting out kind of on a more even playing field where you're both like kind of just, yeah, we're both learning together, and there's no way of like kind of thinking, oh well, this is the right way or that's wrong or you're this like it just kind of brings people, like, I think it is humbling in a way, and it helps people, it helps to have a little bit more fun, be more playful, you know.
For sure. Yeah.
So thanks for like kind of exploring that with me. But yeah, I kind of want to ask you, like, what got you really into theory in the first place? Like, how did that kind of start for you? I feel the same way. Like, Daniel is certainly much more well read than I, you know, but I'm always like open to hearing, and I learn a lot through him and from him, and then I do my own little reading and learning on the side, you know. So but yeah, I'm curious, like, how you got into that, or even just were more open to that from the get-go. So yeah, I'm curious if you'd answer that for me.
Yeah, for sure. So when I was in high school, it was like 2017 and 2018, and I was a part of a international baccalaureate school, which is like an international program that has programs in schools all over the world, and it's just kind of accelerated learning, a little bit more of like a global curriculum. And so I took a IB theater course, and in that course one of the projects was exploring a theater theorist, and so reading about the theory and then applying it to create an original individual like 10-minute piece of theater. And so that was kind of my first introduction to just like reading. It wasn't necessarily a difficult text. The theorist I chose was Antonin Artaud and his Theater of Cruelty. And so I read some of his books, like just on his straight up theory. And I just fell in love with the like process of reading original text and reading something that's difficult and that I have to struggle with to understand, because up until that point it had just been a lot of reading textbooks and reading works of fiction and great literature in my English classes. At the same time that I was having that experience, I also was becoming a lot more, I think, politically active and politically activated. Just being a high school student and witnessing all these school shootings going on and being in the midst of crazy American politics, I just knew inside, I'm like, okay, something is wrong with this country. Something is wrong with this system. There was a part of me that was like, I think capitalism's bad and I don't know why. And so I always kind of had this political inclination. I was in speech and debate, and while I was never really introduced to like any theory or philosophy in that, I just was always like, I love to critically think and I loved to read and I love to get down and analyze things. And so it was my first semester of college is when I met Dave through an organization on campus that was basically a critical theory and philosophy club. And so just right from the get-go, I'm like, okay, I'll join your monthly reading group. And I started reading some obscure, like, I think we read a Deleuze and Guattari piece and some Baudrillard, things that I was like very new to me. But I was enjoying the process of thinking about the world and thinking about these struggles in this deeper way that kind of makes you think a little bit more. I then was introduced to some Marx, kind of like classic sociology, and that's when I went, oh, okay, here's some like old theoretical historical information on the way that our economic system works and thinking about that. And from there I changed my major from political science to sociology. And while I don't think we read as much sociology or much sociological theory throughout my time at the university as I would have hoped, I was still exposed to some. And it just, the whole sociological process and the whole process of trying to understand the roots and the causes of our problems and our structures and systems in this more theoretical way with historical texts, like the texts written by old dead white guys that people don't want to read anymore. I just find it so fascinating because I think it tells us a lot about where we are now. Yeah. And so since then, like I said, I don't do as much heavy reading as Dave. I'm kind of more on the sociological side of everything. But yeah, I think just thinking about the world and coming out of the other end of my sociology degree, almost with like more criticisms of the world and more criticisms of the university and the institutions, I just want to keep reading more and working with more in the time that I'm able to do it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Awesome. That's so cool. Thank you so much for sharing. And I read your essay in the Theory Underground Anthology, and I thought it was really, really a wonderful essay. And
thank you.
Yeah, and I thought like it was just very, like, you really did a beautiful job of like making a very clear argument and criticism of the current structure of university. And I learned a lot also just from your own journey about like how your experience was at the university and how that sort of shaped, because honestly, like going through that and then it seemed to have like provoked a sort of desire to understand it even more. Like, let's get deeper into why might it be this way? Why is it going in this direction, et cetera, et cetera. So I could totally see how like that would push you further into wanting to pursue more theory, philosophy, kind of being more open to that,
Yeah.
So yeah, and I was thinking a little bit more about how you talked about in your essay about sort of this idea that the university has shifted from being a place of truth seeking to getting a job, right? Or the career track, or like, let's get you ready to get a job one day. It's very much, it does feed into like the, into capitalism, into the idea of like, what, is this actually going to make money one day, right?
Yeah.
And I was kind of thinking about this idea of truth seeking, because I definitely think that's a huge part of why Daniel and I do what we do. And I think there's something about like, there was this question that kind of came to mind while I was reading your essay about like, what is it about truth seeking that has become unappealing, or like, because I do think like I don't know if this is too like optimistic or idealistic or something, but I do believe that people in their heart of hearts like desire truth. But I do think that things obscure that very easily and very quickly, and so in many layers of that, there's a lot of obscuring of that. And so then it becomes this, it shifts from that. It shifts from truth seeking to, honestly, I want to say like, I was going to ask you what you think, but like, I wonder if the main reason why it shifts away from truth seeking is fear. It's because like, well, I'm afraid I'm not going to get a job. And yes, that fits into like the whole, I got to get a job, I got to make money, which then, feeds very nicely into all of the corporatism, but yeah, do you think it's a lot about fear? And I mean, I think about children, like, we have young children and they ask a lot of questions, and it's wonderful and amazing and sometimes exhausting, but also mostly like, super cool and always a wonderful, like, it teaches me, about like to slow down and to really listen and to really try to answer those questions and also admit things I don't know. Like, oh, mommy doesn't know that. Like, maybe we can look that up together. Like, let's go look in the dictionary, whatever it is, But like, I think that there's ways in which that truth seeking can become like irritating to the adults or like to the establishment. Not that I want to equate like this, do a direct like analogy of adults to the institutions, but there's something about that I think you could maybe understand what I mean there. And there's something about this sort of like, we don't have time for that sort of thing, and it's just like, but why not? Like, what, we're obsessed with that like kind of efficiency, and yet like people will, they'll speed to get somewhere on, early or whatever, but then they're just bored when they're there,
right?
And it's just like,
yeah.
Why? Like, so yeah, do you think it's mostly fear that kind of shifts people away from truth seeking?
I think the fear that just comes from the economic reality and the economic necessity in this country, like students. So Dave and I we're currently discussion group leaders for a course
Cool.
at our local university that is a required course for all freshmen, but then each department gets to kind of choose a specific topic for the course that just teaches oral communication and critical thinking skills. And just in the first couple weeks of getting the students introductions and finding out why they're in college, the topic of the course is called "Is College Worth It?" And yeah, 90% of their answers are, oh, so I can have a successful and secure future, so I can get a job to make money. And then in the past, when I was doing research at the university, it was a very similar sentiment where we would ask students, what's your biggest fear in life, or why are you here? It is, I've got to pay off this debt. I've got to be able to afford the outrageous cost of living. I'm so scared for my future. And so it seems like there's just no time for truth seeking, for pursuing the arts, for pursuing philosophy, history, science. It's just like, I've got to go start my career right away to start making money, so I'm on the right track, so I can hopefully retire one day. I think that's just kind of the way that things are perceived right now. And there's definitely some truth in that, in terms of how the system sets us up for that. And there's also, I think, some individual responsibility that we can take in our own lives to reclaim a little bit of our time, energy, and say, okay, yeah, I've got to work, but also I'm passionate about this artistic endeavor or whatever it may be, and that makes my life fulfilling. But the university also plays off of this fear and puts students into tens of thousands of dollars of debt, and then promotes and uplifts business courses and pre-nursing and STEM, all useful fields, all great, but they downplay and dismiss and deprioritize those fields that, like Carl Jaspers would argue, are kind of the really important fields, the science and the humanities, that get to the root of thinking about truth. I think that then we can go apply to our business majors and our STEM and our pre-nursing. But the current way, just having been in the university in the last couple of years, is a lot of economic fear. It's a lot of just accepting the status quo and just, this is what college is for, this is what I need to do. I don't want to take any extra fluffy sociology or philosophy classes that don't relate to my major. And yeah, I think that's kind of how it is right now.
Yeah. It was interesting, like, just even thinking in the 10-year difference of, like, thank you for that. That was amazing. I think you're so true with what you say. And I was thinking about how I feel like things that are shifting very quickly, like, because even the way you described your experience at the university. I mean, I graduated, what was it, like 2011, 2012. Technically, I like finished in a semester early. So, but yeah, basically, like, I was like, wow, in that time, there's been quite a lot that's changed even since then, and prices have also changed a lot since then. And it's like, wow, like, this doesn't feel like, I think we both feel, because you mentioned this in your essay as well, but there's a gratitude for that ability to go and to have that experience. I met my husband there,
That's where I met Dave.
Exactly. I had the opportunity to live in Spain for half a year with my twin sister and learn Spanish fluently. Yeah. Like, super incredible, opportunities that I had. But it's one of those things where, like, it's really hard to sometimes talk about it, because it's so hard for people not to just hear, like, that you're not thankful for the university, or, like, you're not, it's like, no, we're thankful for it. We're just also trying to be like, we do need to be able to make things better, or that's the hope, exactly. Right? Like, we want to try to improve things so that this is, like, actually sustainable. At the rate it's going at, it's not sustainable.
No, it's not.
It's not at all. And it's also not, like, really doing what it says it should be doing. Like, it's kind of, I was thinking about, back to my question on truth seeking, like, there's a fundamental, I do believe that what's happening, it seems, now this is kind of this might seem like a harsh statement, but I do feel like there could be a potential dishonesty to the system itself, because it's talking as if it's this sort of bastion of, like, rigorous academic an intellectual pursuit, right? This pursuit of truth, but really a lot of it is like you just talk about in your essay. It's like about getting customers, it's not like
yeah, it's really, as I progressed in my degree, it's less and less rigorous seemingly, and now I'm at the point where, so I applied for a master's degree, or to be a master's student at the same university. I was admitted, and just in the process of, so it's an interdisciplinary degree, and my emphases are sociology, philosophy, and education. And with that, I get to choose the courses that I want to take. I get to basically build my own curriculum. And in looking at the course catalog of all the course offerings, I found so many that I'm like, oh, this seems great. It's about cultural of education, philosophy of education. There's critical theory courses in the communications department. Well, just over the last few months, they've all disappeared. All the classes, oh, this one's not being offered anymore. Oh, this one doesn't have very much interest. And so now I'm sitting here going, why am I even going to school at this place when half these classes that I wanted to take are gone? And it is all of the more rigorous courses, you could say, or the ones that aren't just focused on direct applicable job skills or administration and leadership, like within the education. Like all of the cultural or philosophical based courses just poof, not offered anymore.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's so nuts. Yeah, and that can feel frustrating too, because you're like, I did this in order to be able to do that, and really to develop that more and cultivate that and learn more in those areas. And then it's like, if those just are like all of a sudden they just are not there anymore, it's like, well, what? Like, this changes things a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, more fodder for my thesis where I'm gonna take this institution down.
Yeah, perfect. You're like, maybe that's the silver lining. Like, this is all the proof I need.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's crazy. But also, like, yeah, there is, like, in a way, it's like, it's almost an experiment to be back in the system, because you're like, I'm just observing, I'm watching, I'm seeing how this is really gonna go,
Right.
and how it really is. And then sort of using that for your own research. Like, that's really cool. I think that's what life can be about, which makes it really interesting. You know, you don't get so stuck in like, oh, I'm so disappointed and this sucks. It's like, well, wait a second, maybe I can use this for my thesis.
Exactly, yeah.
So I think that's really, a great perspective. Like, that's great for you to be able to have that, like, ability to have a perspective shift of like, wait a second, yeah, this isn't great, but this actually can help me prove and develop my own thinking about writing on the institution and developing my thinking about it.
And it's like, I still believe in the institution to some extent, otherwise I wouldn't be going back for a master's at all. And there's great things about my university, like the connections that I made in the sociology department, and some of the research cohorts that they have are fantastic. And so there's definitely pros and cons, and I'm coming in both more cynical than ever and more optimistic than ever.
Well, that might be a great combo, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's challenging, right? Because it kind of reminds me, like, Daniel and I did a course. We had the opportunity, which we were so thankful for, to teach a course on Ivan Ilich and at Parallax.
Awesome.
A couple of months ago now. I'm like, I just lose track of time. And last year. And yeah, it's just, his work is really incredible. And I think it's, I'm thinking about him because of medical nemesis, and like, just there are areas of our society, right, where these things are like, they do a lot of good, but there's also a lot of bad. So like the medical institutions, like the educational institutions. So it's hard. Again, it's like this ability to like, this is the bothness. This is a space of the nuance where we need to be able to have conversations about the pros and the cons. Where we can talk about it and not automatically be labeled as, you're just a dissident. You're just like somebody who's, anti everything, or anti-establishment, anti-institution. It's like, no, we're talking about it so this could be made better, hopefully, and yeah, but I think that, I was thinking about what you're saying with like the courses and what's offered. It's interesting too, because in your essay, you're talking about how much they focus on these like utilitarian, that's like the intention and the hope. They're like, let's get everybody like employable, basically. But it's so weird because so many people after college, like, what skills do they really have? It depends on, now, don't get me wrong. It does depend on what major you were in and what department you were in. And there are skills you can learn. Like this is like a minor one and maybe not too utilitarian, but I did learn Spanish because of my experience at the university. Now, it did take my effort of like, I'm only going to speak Spanish when I'm in Spain, it does take your, like, and that's the thing. In some ways, there's a part of it is like, it is what you make it. So even in a broken system, you can still make it something amazing and like beneficial to yourself and those around you in your community because of what you do and what you do with it.
Exactly.
And that's why, like, I think that's beautiful. That's what you're doing right now, like with going back and pursuing a master's. And but yeah, I think there's something about this idea of like there are some real life skills that we just don't get taught in like the conventional educational system, like we live on a farm. So it's just like, I think about all this stuff, like, just chopping wood, starting a fire, like just the simple stuff. But yeah, and maybe people could be like, well, that's not necessary these days. We've got electricity, that's all good and well. But there are ways in which those things are still very valid skills, or like, they can help you if the grid's down for whatever reason.
Yeah.
It's just like, why don't we, like, I don't know, to me it's funny because the university seems to have this hyper emphasis on being like, employable and having these skills. But what are those exact skills anyway? Like, could you have gone to like almost like, I'm forgetting the word that it is now. It's like schools that teach skills, basically.
Like a trade school.
Yeah, like maybe like even these institutions as they are, if they could incorporate more of the trade school mentality or like options for kids at those schools, I think that would almost be more practical. Like,
it's like they're coming for job skills, but they're paying tens of thousands of dollars for mediocre education, when it's like, if all you care about is becoming employable, just go to a trade school or do an online YouTube course, or just go get on the job training.
Exactly.
And I think part of it is like, but I want a high paying job. I want a managerial job, professional. I want to be a professional, a doctor. And that all seemingly requires this bachelor's degree, which is just, proof that I can do it.
But like, yeah, exactly. But it's almost like, what does it exactly prove again? Like, what could, I don't know. There's something strange about that, because it's like, I'm not saying people don't come out of the university with like create amazing skills and stuff, but I don't know. Sometimes you do wonder, is it just like, is it almost like the notion of it, or just the words of it? But what does that actually mean? That's why I feel like, there's been so much emphasis on like resume building, but I think people should be developing portfolios. Like, what are you making? What are you making? Like, if you're, and sure, I guess that's part of it. Like, I did studio art for a lot of my years, at least like in high school. And I did do a lot of studio art in college too, actually. But like, there are certain departments that might emphasize that, but like, I don't know. It's just, it's strange because I feel as though it's almost a little bit like higgledy-piggledy about its own goals. Like, is it making practical skills for people or not? Like, it's almost a pseudo employability, because a lot of people after college are also going to go and have like 3 weeks of job training to 2 months or whatever, like they're going to have to go and basically relearn everything, or, learn it all there. So it's like, why couldn't they have just jumped to that? Like, and I mean, I guess it just depends. Some people might want to go and have the university experience. Some people don't. Some people are like, but the notion that like it is the only way. Like, Daniel has this great paper on monopoly on credentials, and it's a wonderful essay. And he talks a little bit about this idea of like, there's this. It's not an intentional monopoly, but it kind of is. Where the universities have this monopoly on credentials. It's like, and I would look, sorry to go on and on, but I'll wrap up this point and pass it to you. But, I remember being at the university and looking up jobs potentially, and so many of them required a master's and like 2 to 5 years of experience. And I was like, well, wait a second, what if I don't want to pay for a master's right now? And also, how am I going to get that experience without ever having the opportunity to get that experience by going in, so it's just like,
it's like, was the 4 years at college not experience enough?
I guess not. But then what was it, Anne? I mean, what was it then? don't know. It's just, it's strange in that way, you know, where I'm not sure exactly what, because then it just keeps getting inflated and inflated. Like it used to be a high school diploma meant something. Now you have to have a bachelor's. Now you have to have a master's. Why? You know, like, unless you really want to do some of the heavier research and stuff like that, if it's just about a job, I mean, I just don't know. I just feel like it is a monopoly on credentials at that point. We just want to see you have that, like, that paper or that degree so that we know you did it. But like, like you're talking about in your essay, it's not as if the rigor is necessarily always there, depending, but it can become a lot more about like, you know, busy work basically, or, you know, you're not even reading like direct source material. It's secondary sources for things, you know?
Yeah.
And then on top of it, where you can't even really have like genuine conversations because somebody might be offended, or like, you know, it's hard. You're kind of like tiptoeing around certain topics, and it's so hard to really get rigorous and actually serious with conversations if you're kind of always worried that like this might be something that, you know, because you get into that too, where you talk about some of the things that happen at universities where there's this heavy emphasis on like some of the woke things and things like that, where like, I totally empathize and understand where anybody's coming from with their position, and with certain positions that are, you know, more robust in the university. I get that. But the whole point is that we can have like really open, fair, and rigorous discourse. That
exactly.
And so it's like, well, that's not really being able to happen. So yeah, again, it goes back to the question of what exactly is the purpose, besides just everybody believing in it, almost like Santa Claus or something. I don't know. Like,
yeah, no, that's so true.
Because I do think there's kind of this, there is a sort of collective belief in it, you know, and this idea that like, well, that's what it means to be doing, like, to be like, being successful, like even as a younger person, like as a teenage, you know, late teenager, basically, like people get worried if you're not going to go to college. Well, what is that?
Yeah, there's so much pressure, and a lot of the students in our class this year have expressed, oh yeah, I came here because it was just kind of the next thing I was supposed to do, and all my friends were going, and my parents wanted me to go, so here I am, getting a business degree. Like, but do you really want to be here right now? Because if where you're at in your life right now is you just want to go party and travel, go party and travel, and then you don't have, there's so much pressure for young people to like make a decision right now. Start your career right now, and it kind of goes back to that economic necessity. But I think a lot of students, because of that, just societal, oh, this is just what we do, we all just believe in it, and you have to do it to get a good career. Students don't even think about their choice of going to college. Maybe they choose which college they want to go to based on, oh, they have a great nursing program, or oh, I really like their blue turf, or whatever it might be. But they don't think about it too much. It's just the next step after high school.
Yeah. And you can't blame people. Like, that's when it's a collective mindset, it's very hard to question it. You're not going to really, until it's kind of like, I don't say too late, but until you're in like a lot of debt, and that's why I think like, if you want to go to the university, great. But you really, really, in my opinion, if I were to get, like, not that I'm going to give anyone advice on this unless I directly ask, but it's like, if you're getting into debt to go to college, you really need to think about that, because that's really like hard to climb out of. Now, if you are like, nope, that's fine, I understand that, I accept that, I'm going to do it, then great, you know, go for it.
Yeah.
But it's just that, like, the debt it's, you know, and that's why I think like with university, maybe it's just the awareness around it. Like, again, sure, we can talk about its kind of scrambled motives or goals that the university itself has for itself, for its students, but it's, you know, if it is ultimately going to be about like what you make it, and you're not getting into debt, then cool, like, you know, do it. Just be aware that you know, it doesn't necessarily make you any more marketable for it. It might make you more marketable for a job, but it may not, because now you just have a bachelor's, you don't even have a master's. Like, I'm
exactly right.
And it's like, well, you know, a lot of the jobs that you might be seeking after are going to require a master's. But yeah, I don't know. I think that that idea of it just the next thing that you do is a lot of why people do it. And then we're just not getting very thoughtful, you know, and that's where I think some of these things can kind of like, the wool can be pulled over people's eyes, because they're just not paying very much attention. And again,
Yeah.
I don't blame anyone, because and everybody feels like they're doing the right thing, they're doing the best thing, or and
Yeah.
parents are like they're wanting the best for their children, and so I totally understand, right? But I think we have to start being like, well, wait, is questioning the best can be hard, because it feels like you're questioning a sacred cow or something like that. Like, it's like, it feels like
Yeah.
you can't touch it or talk about it. But I do think we need to. Honestly, like, we kind of owe it to the institution itself to be able to ask questions and make, like I said, try to improve it, try to make it actually the best place that it can be for people, so that it doesn't like trick them. Because I think a lot of people, and I've talked to many people who felt very tricked. Like, they felt like this was the way that was going to secure their future, and they just ended up with like either a lot of debt, or like not really a lot of direction, or they weren't able to find a job as easily as they were hoping, or it wasn't really the job that they were hoping for,
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing. It's like, if you're aware of that, then fine, no problem. But if you're under some illusion that it's going to be like, this is the ticket, like, this is my golden ticket to, like, some satisfying lifelong career where I can retire one day, like, then it's not, it isn't necessarily that. And often it isn't.
Yeah, and I think with the rising price of school and just the rising cost of living, I think a lot of students are becoming more and more disillusioned. Like, even these 18 to 20-year-old, mostly freshman students in our course are already very critical of this question of, is college worth it? And they say, worth $50,000? No, that's way too much money. And so, yeah, you had mentioned earlier that the model is not sustainable. And so, yeah, with the cost of education and coinciding with the cost of living in general and the debt crisis, like the student debt, yeah, I don't know how much longer people are going to be okay with taking out $60,000 of loans and then being charged another $60,000 of interest over their lifetime for a college degree, when it isn't even necessarily guaranteeing them anything better in the future. And so we're already starting to see that in this like new freshman class. They're already like, is it worth it? I don't know. I hope to find out.
We're hoping yes, right? It's like,
yeah.
That's super cool, though, that you have like direct contact with young students, or like young in the sense that they're coming in like for their first year or their freshman year.
Yeah.
Really see it like really in live, like real time. You're seeing like this unfold right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really cool and neat that you get to just like hear out from students, like how they, what they think and what they feel. But how they feel about it is also going to really impact like their actual participation in classes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like you had that part in your essay where you're talking about like you had this like super passionate kind of lecture like the week before spring break. I remember, like, and then there were so few people who showed up like to class.
Yeah.
Because they like already checked out mentally.
They were like, spring break, I'm gone. It's like, okay.
Yeah, and it's just weird because like you said, like that the title is what is it again? Like, is college, what's the title of the course?
Yeah, is college worth it?
Is college worth it? Yeah. You, like you said in like your essay, you think kids would be like, yeah, is it worth it? We should be talking about this stuff. But yet, like, it even seemed in that there was like a lackluster in classes. Is that true?
Yeah. So like, it's easy to, I think, especially from the perspective of like a probably over enthusiastic course instructor, to feel frustrated with sometimes the lack of effort. And I think there's a lot of things that go into play there. There's students have to work, students are worried about other classes that are directly related to their majors, students are also there, and there's nothing wrong with it, to socialize and party and go to football games and Greek life events. And so there's just a lot going on in students' lives, to where mandatory 100 level course. Yeah, I think our topic is interesting, and I think most students enjoy this topic, because I taught this same course a couple years ago, because they're living the college experience right now, and so they have things to say about it. But for the most part, I think they're a little bit checked out of classes that are not directly related to their chosen career field. And so, like I said, it can be frustrating, but I understand. But then I also see the staff and the faculty catering to this lackluster attitude, and the standards for students are just, they're so low. I mean, the lead professor who Dave and I are working with on this course, she's kind of treats them and talks about them as if they're like first graders.
Really? Whoa.
Yeah, like, just it's just expected they're not going to want to read and write, so we should make the standards and the requirements just as little as possible and give them easy articles to read, and just really like not expect too much from them. And so even I was feeling that in some of my upper division courses in my last few years of my bachelor's degree. Just like, I feel like the professor doesn't even believe in us or want to challenge us. And I think part of that is also they've got bureaucratic things going on that they need to deal with, especially like a chair of a department. I was also, when I was an undergrad student, half of my college experience was during COVID years. And so like the semester of spring 2020 was just a disaster for everyone. Then it was kind of mostly remote the rest of my time, which was difficult to have discussions and meet with and engage with instructors. But it just seems like the academic standards and expectations have lowered, and I think it's really sad because students want to be challenged. I think they want to learn. Like, even if they say, oh, I'm here for a career, they all have some class that they're really passionate about or some extracurricular that they're passionate about, and they express the sentiment of being excited about having discussions and hearing new perspectives. And so I think the desire is there, but the rigor and the belief in them that, hey, having discussions and thinking about things in a more rigorous way and reading challenging texts is worth it, and you can do it. I think that is just, in my experience at my institution, I don't really see it there as much.
That's so fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing. I think that, like, it makes me think a little bit about, well, two things came to mind. One of the things is like the fact that, well, I think it makes me think, like, reflect on my own experience. And, you know, I'm very grateful that I'm also very grateful that I had the opportunity to go to university. And I had, like, it just is a mixed bag, you know. There's some really, I loved getting smaller classes. Like, those were some of my favorite, where they were small, you know, more intimate type of like settings and I could have like deeper conversations. I love those. The big lecture classes, you know, where there's just like 4 multiple choice tests and that's like going to be your grade, like that. Those are rough. But I think, like, there were also times where there'd be discussions and there was an atmosphere that was like, it's hard to describe, but it felt like stifled, in the sense that I sometimes would bring up questions that I didn't really know at the time. I wouldn't even know if I would call them philosophical. You know, I wasn't really like, I only really came to develop more philosophically, like, after college, really, or maybe the end of it. But I think that I did have questions. I had questions, and they were more philosophical in nature, in the sense that, I don't know, I think philosophical is a funny term. It's like, it sounds so kind of highfalutin, but it's really just like, how does this have to do with our actual lives, you know? And I think that I would ask those questions, and I could sometimes even just see, like, the disposition of the TA's face change, like, as if I threatened the status quo, you know, of, like, the entire discussion, because I asked that. And there would sometimes be like kind of just a dismissing of it, or kind of like a, don't be silly, like, we you know, kind of, really, it was kind of a dismissing of that. But I'm not saying like I brought up anything brilliant or genius. It was probably pretty just simple stuff. But sometimes people, like my classmates, would come up to me afterwards and they would be like, that was a really interesting question. Like we would talk about it after class.
Yeah.
And it was just like, what? It's like, why couldn't we have talked about it in class? Like what? And I felt that way, on several occasions or I would have these essay ideas that were just kind of off the wall. And sure, like they were probably not like brilliant or anything, but
Yeah.
they were, I wanted to provide something unique. Like I didn't really say what somebody else was saying. Why would I just find sources to state what somebody else said? Like I want to say something that's different or unique, and not for the sake of it being unique, but because it's like, I'm more interested in that than just restating what somebody else said. So
Yeah.
those were the types of things that I ran into, which felt like strange. And like, it feels as if it shouldn't really be this way, really. Like, not that it, like, I don't want to put the word should, that's like a very, very heavy word, but it just felt strange. Like that I would have anticipated it being a little bit different. I don't know what I really expected, honestly, with college. I probably didn't think a ton about it, but yeah, there were times when it felt a little, and I don't know, I for the most part didn't like let it get me down too much, but I did sort of find that strange. And I just, so it made me think about that. Because I think a lot of times, like, rigor is not just about the work. It is about actually reading hard text, but it's really about being able to go deeper. Like, it's about being able to ask the questions you don't know the answer to beforehand, and you have to really actually think improvisationally, because you can have a class that has a ton of busy work, and it's hard for that reason. Like, it's just so much work, but it's really not hard work. It's just a ton of it. So it just feels like it's hard to keep up with that pace, right? But in terms of it being actually hard in the rigorous sense, it's more like it makes your brain work. Like it might also require you to have sustained concentration to read something that's longer or more source material,
Yeah, and this idea of concentration and is such a struggle right now in the university, especially I think with not to be that technology these days, but like the technology and the social media. It's like I was in the lecture session for our course the other day, and in the lecture session the lead instructor, the lead professor, kind of takes that on, and Dave and I will get opportunities to present in there as well. But I was just kind of hanging out, listening, and just observing students. And it's like, okay, there's one playing on his phone. Okay, there's one girl on her laptop doing a completely different assignment. Okay, she's on Instagram. Okay, she's texting. And so, again, I don't blame them. It's like we have these little pocket distraction devices on us at all time, and I am so guilty of it as well. And it's something I've been battling for years, and I'm trying to overcome and think about more critically, like in our critical media theory and digital literacy course at Theory Underground. But that the first time I did this discussion group, I let the students decide and was very democratic about it and said, okay, what should our phone policy be? And they said, well, we should be able to use our phones in class if we want, because it's our education and we're paying for it. And I said, okay, fair enough. And then I had students bringing like a Nintendo Switch into class when it was supposed to be a discussion class. And so today I gave them my brief spiel on, hey, I would really love it if our discussion groups were just a technology-free zone, for 50 minutes. We can just keep our phones in our backpack. You don't need your laptop. If there's an emergency, you can step outside. But I think students just aren't used to that. And so I'm really hoping I don't face too much resistance, and I'm not going to over police it, but I'll just try to encourage hey, we just come in here and we talk. And in my experience, when I have times where it's just we come and we talk and there's no distractions and everyone's not on their Instagram or looking at their phone, I feel so energized after the fact. And so I'm hoping that rubs off on them. But that's definitely an issue with the shortened attention spans and just the access to distractions and ability to procrastinate in such an easy way.
Yeah, no, that's so good. That's so good. And that's so important. And that's one of probably the biggest changes, like from when I was in university, because like I think I had like maybe a flip phone that my last 2 years or something, or maybe I had a cell phone, but it was like a Nokia, like it wasn't a smartphone. And I when I went to Spain, I definitely didn't have a smartphone. It was like landline, call my mom and dad like maybe once every 2 months. Like I couldn't, I emailed, I could do email, like it wasn't. And I had like this little, that was also a Nokia phone in Spain. Like I just, it would be like you put on minutes and you could just basic text, like T9 word,
Right. Yeah.
And I know this probably sounds like, just like old jargon now, but anyways, it, you use the phone like a phone, like you use it to phone call, and texting wasn't really big it was started to become big, and some people were already on, like they'd already jumped on that bandwagon, and they were, they had iPhones and all of that. But it really wasn't as present. Now people did have like their laptops, which they'd bring, and that could always be a source of distraction. So I don't think it's like crazy different, but I do think it is, I don't know, I do think there's probably a significant difference there. Like I don't think it's in like entirely different, like we're talking the 1980s to now, but like I do think there has been a totally, it's ramped up, like that distraction and that and cell phone use, and because also apps like Facebook was already there. I don't know about Instagram. Maybe it was. I'm sure some folks were on Instagram. But the point of the matter is that it wasn't as much of a thing that people were just constantly on. And and like really, I mean, I think I had, like I said, some type of phone, but it was like I know it was a flip phone in my last year of college, and that meant like texting was like it almost was like a little finger workout, because like it was, you're like tapping stuff, like it was like almost not worth it. It was like not worth it to text because it just took so much time. So like, never mind, I'll just, if you did it, it meant you really like maybe were into the person you were texting. Like if you texted, you like really wanted to hear from them and all of that. So it does change like things radically. Like the particularity of the technologies really, really changes our engagement with them and our propensity to use them and how we use them. It's not the same, right? Like all technologies are not. Technology needs to always be talked about as the particular technology, and because a landline is totally different from an iPhone,
exactly.
And I think that I'm sure that's a really hard like issue to deal with as from a teaching perspective, because it's just like, hello, like are we here, or are we
right
not here?
And the struggle is that it's so necessary. So like today my morning classes got canceled because of snow, and last week they were canceled because of snow too, and so I said, okay, I'm gonna have zoom class. I at least want to meet these students and get going. And that scheduling a Zoom class was working under the assumption that they all have a laptop or a phone that they can join from. Last year, it was 2022, 2023. I did an experiment where I was like, I'm gonna get rid of my iPhone and go back to a little Nokia brick phone, with the T9 texting. And so I kept my iPhone to function as like an iPod, so I could take pictures, listen to music. But I was like, this is my phone, because for me it was like, I can't never just turn my phone off, because I'm the type of person, but what if someone needs to get a hold of me? And so anyways, I tried that for a little over 6 months, and it was just very hard to function in this day and age with all of our technology. Even just, like you said, texting people to like schedule a phone call or schedule a meeting in person. I became the worst texter in the world. People would be like, hey, do you want to go do something? And then a week and a half later, I'd be like, oh, sorry. And it took me 5 minutes to like type a response. Like having access to maps now, especially like in all the traveling that Dave and I did in the last year, it was really useful to be able to have a smartphone to find maps in places that we're unfamiliar with. And so it's such a struggle, because it kind of has become a necessity, having a smartphone and a laptop at the bare minimum. So, and there's pros to that, but then the cons that come with the addicting media, the addicting apps, and just the constant distraction that it can provide. It's, yeah, the battle to overcome that has been a lifelong challenge for me, and I think lots of other people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's so good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And I think that it's probably even harder for people who don't even recognize it as part of the problem. Like they've grown up their whole lives with it. It's why would that be like what's like taking a massive amount of my energy, you know, like what, but it is like, it can be so distracting and like this perpetual sort of fragmentation of the brain and the mind. I do think, like, you know, Dana and I talk a lot about it, because he's never had like a cell phone. Like I had to find him if I wanted to talk to him, you know, or email him, or because, you know, he had like 2 or 3 places he'd usually be. So you know, I could usually for the most part, I could find him. But there was something really sweet about that, like very just simple, so simple, you know, like there was something like when we're together, when we're not, and we're not going to try to make it like we are able to talk even though we're not in the same place, you know, like there was something really just simple about that and like refreshing, and it puts your mind at ease because like you can't talk if you're not in the same place, so just you don't even have to think about it, like it's already done for you, the limitation is there. Now we have to put limitations on ourselves, and that's so existential, you know, like anytime
for real.
And I think, I mean, one of the things that I think can be helpful is like thinking about it spatially too, because having one's phone in a different room is a very different experience than it being on the table there with you.
Exactly,
you know? So just kind of paying attention to those sorts of things, like, or blocks of time to have it around or not, like, can be helpful too, because it's not simply like, yes, there is a way in which you could kind of go cold turkey and just be like, I'm going to go back to flip phone and whatever. I'll just, you know, I'll have my laptop station, like a little, that's where I do my work. And then I'll have my flip phone. That's one way, but it is hard, right? Because like you said, with like you, if you're traveling or, you know, all of the things. So it could be maybe what people have to think about it more today is like spatially, and spatially in terms of time blocks too, where it's not that the technology is never used, but it's when are you kind of allowing yourself to use it, or where is it going to be put, you know? Because I think those things can really help and make a big difference just in terms of our like our mind is like, okay, yeah, I have not, like, I won't let myself take it out of this room. So if I'm not in that, you know, I have to actually go back there to that room if I want to check it, instead of just the kind of mindless checking because it's there. You know, those things. I mean, I think those things can help to a degree. It's not like it's necessarily a sure thing, but and it's still something to kind of contend with. But we do really live in a time when we have to put limitations on ourselves and like kind of face the existential question of that, or the choice of that, where it's like, and that's challenging because also we feel like we kind of always have to be available, or like is like, and there's a tension with that because a lot of times it's for good stuff, it's not bad stuff necessarily. So it's like, oh, like then I can't, like, but if I have that limitation on myself, it means I can't, like, you know, video chat with this person or a family member. I will sometimes video chat with occasionally then, you know. And I don't know, I mean, it's hard because it's like, well, you can maybe have some leeway with this, but then when does it become like leeway all the way? And then it's just, now it's back to no limitation. But I do think the spatial thing can be a big help, just about the idea of like, what room is it in? And that way, you know, even if you are using it maybe outside of, like, if you have a screen time or something like that, like, which is funny because I'm a mom, so my kids do have like screen time, but I've also tried to limit it myself to that too, because I don't, you know, they're watching. So I don't want to set an example of just like always, you know, reaching for the phone, even though I do really need it for many things in terms of emails and this, that, and the other, because I don't really use a laptop, just because of the nature of like how the day goes for me and what the things I'm trying to accomplish and the how of that. So, but it's like, yeah, I don't want to just always be reaching for it, or, you know, use it. Because the thing is, it's an amalgama. It's like this, you use it for, it's used for the time, it's used for photos, it's used for, and that's why it's also hard, because for the stuff that's addictive, whatever that addiction thing might be on the phone, it can sometimes be really bad stuff, and sometimes it's just stupid stuff, you know. But it's like you have, you know, you've got this device is being used for, it can be potentially used for all of it. So how do we, like, it's so difficult to just see it as needing limits, or as like needing to be more skeptical about our use with it, because it's always sort of easily able to be justified, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but I do think it's another area where we have to kind of get a little bit more like, let's slow down a little bit and actually pay attention to what we're doing, so that we can, you know, not let it get the best of us. Like, we need it to be a tool, but we don't want to become the tools for it, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But I know that we are coming to a close on our time, and I know you have to go. So
Mm-hmm.
I really, really appreciate getting to talk with you today, Anne, and just jumping into some of the topics we were able to discuss. I really enjoyed it a lot, and I appreciate your time so much. I hope we could do it again soon.
Yeah, me too. No, this was really awesome, and it was really great too. I love that our first actual like meeting and hearing each other's voices was just like boom, interesting conversation. I love that so much, and so yeah,
Yay,
I
I'm so
hope.
glad we can jump right into it and just like go there. I love that too.
Yeah, so thank you so much for thinking of me and having me
Yeah.
on. It's great. I love being like the Theory Underground supporter and Dave's supporter all the way, but it's also like, oh yeah, I've got some things going on too. And so I just really appreciate that you thought of me to reach out and wanted to
Absolutely.
hear from me as an individual.
Oh, absolutely, Anne. That is absolutely what my goal was. So I'm really happy you felt
Awesome.
that. And I love this. I love getting to talk with you. And thanks for sharing from your world and your mind and the work you're doing. And it's really important. And so, yay. I'm so
Thank
happy we
you.
had
Yeah.
this. Yeah. Thank you, Anne.
Awesome. Have a great rest of your night and we'll
Yes.
talk to you soon.
Yes. Sounds great. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.